Welcome to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson and I ask my guests one simple question. Why? Focusing on the importance of why, I share with you the relatable, uplifting and inspiring conversations I have with people from all walks of life. This podcast will encourage you to focus on your why to enable and empower you to achieve the success you desire. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Today, I am joined by Lisa Bedlow on the Focus on Why podcast. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here. I'm really, really excited to be talking to you today.
Well, it's been a long time planning. We spoke, we were trying to work it out. I think it was back in December. So the other side of the other year that has been a big year. And we were very kindly introduced by another one of Focus Why guests who was Angela Rigby, or still is Angela Rigby. Thank you, Angela, for this introduction.
Yes, thank you, Angela. You're a superstar.
She is indeed. So what do you think made Angela point us in the right direction to one another?
Good question. I think Angela knows I'm so passionate about working with children, helping to improve their lives, make a difference. And really, I'm so heart-driven by wanting to move things forward and give the children of this generation the best possible chances to move forward in their lives. And she knows that I'm reaching out, making contacts and connections with people who share that passion with me. And I know Angela and I'm sure we're going to be joining this journey somewhere along the line in the future. She's definitely a kindred spirit who understands what I'm working towards.
So why children and why make a difference?
Oh, I love that. Well, I was recently described by a lovely group of people of anything children, Lisa Bedlow, anything children, or everything children, I think it might have been, because I think even from a very, very young age, I've just been drawn to working with children. So I did the typical kind of 14-year-old babysitting for people's children, friends and neighbours up the road. Then I went into nannying. Then I went into teaching. I became a head teacher, then an executive head teacher. And I still have this massive passion. And it's kind of like it's a heart inbuilt justice for children. I've got to get their voice heard. And I start with the youngest children, working all the way up. I've worked with all ages from, zero babies all the way up to sort of 19, 20-year-olds. And I think it's just about wanting to help in any way I possibly can. Obviously, as an educator, it's not just about education, although I have noticed a big, big change in the way children are. Well, I've been educating for 30 years now. So in that 30 years, I've noticed such a big change in children's moods, feelings, sensitivities. And I think in my years as a head teacher, I was starting to notice a change in the families wanting more for their children, wanting more than just the education side, but actually wanting some things that were going to support them emotionally as well. And I think that was where my passion came through. And as someone who also does energy healing, I've got a wealth of tools and techniques that I can use to help children, help families, help teachers. So I think that's why children. It's just so ingrained in me.
It's fantastic. And I wanted to ask you about the justice for children, what that means to you.
I think it is just that being a voice for the children. And that probably stems from my own childhood. I was one of 3 children, born to a mother who she was young. She wasn't overly happy being a young mum stuck at home with 3 children. And I think I was in a class of 40 children when I went to primary school. So very much sort of probably sidelined and not noticed, which probably suited me at that time just to be small. But I kind of think there were lots of things around that, being a very highly anxious child with lots of stress in my life and not understanding a lot, I think, that I just wanted to change that. I remember once interviewing a teacher when I was a deputy head. We were interviewing this teacher and we asked her, why do you want to work with children? And she said, I just want to make it better for them than it was for me as a child. And I suddenly had this light bulb moment of, oh, I think that's why I'm teaching. So I think it is this justice for children, giving them a voice. And interestingly, we sadly, since I last spoke to you, had a local child was murdered in our community, 13-year-old boy, and beautiful boy, Ollie Stevens. And I've been working with lots of the families who've been impacted by his murder. And his sister and family have set up a Justice for Ollie page. And I think it is that word justice. Children need to have their voice. If it can't be when they're living, but it can be when they've passed away or died, then it's I will still do it. I'll fight for children whether they're alive or dead. And I think supporting Ollie, his friends, his family, is just as valuable to me as supporting all these other children who've been through my many schools, or whether that was nannying days, babysitting days. Just so many children I've come across in my lifetime.
So you've been in the system, you've been in the education system, you're now outside the education system. How can you make a bigger impact from outside than you could from within?
That's a good question, because it's interesting how these Facebook memories come up, and I had a few recently that were, I was head of two nursery schools, two state-funded nursery schools, and recently in my later years of being there, funds were decreasing, we were going up to Parliament, we were lobbying, and I really felt passionate about putting money into early years education, because we all know that's the benefit. If you can really give children a love of learning at early years, then you don't have to put out lots of issues. Later on, you don't have to keep putting money into perhaps the prison system or where they've been let down. So I think for me, being in the education system, you are limited by what you're allowed to say or do because of the local authority, and you have to, obviously, you're in a figure of authority or somebody who's role modelling and leading by example in the community. And I still do that, and I'm still really passionate. But I think now I've set up a community interest company, which is very like a charity. I've got my own voice and I can do things my way. I don't have to think, oh, well, I might get told off by my local authority if I do this. It's very much, I can now lead totally from the heart, not by what other people are telling me I can lead by. And I think that's where my passion lies. It's that I can now be that voice, speak out, whether it's for a teacher who's struggling with a child, or a parent who's struggling with a child, or a child who's struggling with themselves. It's not guided by anyone else out of that. It's just me, what I believe in, what I know, and the skills and techniques I've built up over the last 30 years or so.
And you're talking with great clarity now, Lisa, and you're saying about being led from the heart, that you're heart driven. What difference does that make for you to come from the heart? Is it linked to your energy work?
I think it is, actually, and I think that's been a kind of recent revelation for me. I'm exploring lots of different modes of energy work, and I love it. And whether it's something as simple as, I've got friends who do Reiki healing. I had some time as a pranic healer. I'm now doing what I call natural intuitive energy healing, and I think it's tuning into children and letting them. They're amazing. Young children are so intuitive. I love working with them. They're also very quick to heal. And I've had such fabulous results doing I have a one-to-one program that I do with children in the home, especially for children with anxiety, eating disorders, self-harm, you name it. Anything I can do work with it and help it. So I think, yes, I very much feel it's heart-led. And I think when I was in the education system, I was able to, as a head teacher, I was able to employ people who shared that heart-led passion with myself. But I did notice some of my lovely colleagues were very much head-driven, very much, oh, no, we have to do it this way. We have to follow this policy, this procedure, this way, rather than really going with what is right for the child. And I think now I'm doing what I'm doing, I can totally go with what's right for the child. Every child's unique and individual. I do work with quite a high number of children on the autistic spectrum, or those with ADHD, high sensitivity sensory issues. So those sort of, what I just call them sensitive children. They are a beautiful new generation of children coming through with amazing intuitive skills, and they are very open to anything. They haven't got the adult thing of, oh, well, that's a load of rubbish, isn't it? They just open, and they believe, and they trust, and they can tell. And this is something, going back to my head teacher days, that if we were interviewing, I always would get a candidate to sit with the children, because looking at how the children respond to that candidate tells me so much more than just sitting and interviewing that candidate, because children are intuitive and they can sense if somebody's genuine and true and kind, or if they're not. And that was often, for me, the biggest part of the interview. It was seeing how someone interacted with children.
It's really interesting, and I'm working with another lady at the moment to launch her podcast, and she's an ex-head teacher, which she's fabulous. I'm going to introduce you. Absolutely will
Oh,
really
please do.
need to, yeah, and you need to get on her show as well, because it's all about unlocking your hidden confidence. And I feel that's what you're helping these children do in giving them a voice as well. And that links back to you saying that you were highly anxious as a child.
Yeah.
Was it diagnosed formally, or was it just something that you lived with and had to deal with and find your own strategies?
Absolutely that, because I was a child born in the 60s, raised in the 70s and 80s. And yeah, no one ever gave any kind of support. And I think I look back now and reflect, and I can see so many things that I just think, gosh, that poor little girl that I was, with stress and anxiety. My parents went through a divorce when I was quite young. We were one of the only families in my school that had divorced parents. So obviously there was a slight kind of stigma and shame around that. I think with the trauma of that, I had this condition where I actually pulled all my hair out, and nobody ever questioned me or asked me. Nobody wanted to know, why are you doing that? And I had all these little tics and twitches in my face, and I was a bedwetter. I had all the signs of an anxious child. So now when I work with children, or when a family gets in touch with me and says either we've been through a divorce, or our child's suffering stress or anxiety, or they've got this condition, I can so empathize. I can feel the sadness of that child. I can feel where they are, because that was me. I was lucky. I made a very, very dear, close friend in school from a very young age, just 7 years old, and we're still really, really close. And I would say to her, she was like my guardian angel. She came along, picked me up, and just gave me that strength and confidence to get through school and education when I didn't really feel I had any adult support, but she was there for me. So yeah.
And is that what you are now, Lisa? You're the guardian angel?
That's a beautiful way of putting it, but I like to think I am. I think I am that guardian angel for all those children and parents who are maybe struggling, not knowing where to go. And I know the system is overloaded. The CAM system, the child and adolescent mental health system, they are overburdened. There's a 2-year waiting list for any kind of support. I've had families who've said, oh, my child's got eating disorders, but we've got to wait a year or two. There's nowhere local. Do you recommend anywhere? Do you know anywhere? I'm always being asked these kind of questions. And it is, being that guardian angel to help the child see that they can help themselves, that they've got it within themselves, by just giving them some tools and techniques. And they might be as simple as taking some deep breathing. Anyone who does mindfulness knows that, just that tuning into your body, listening to your body, taking those deep breaths, to another activity I do is called Amazing You. Tell me 5 amazing things about you. And a young child will probably be able to do that, because they can say, I can jump high, or I've got friends, or but an older child will really struggle with that and say, I'm not sure. And then I either have to kind of gently pull it out of them, or I might say, well, how would your friends describe you? What would they say? Because sometimes it's easier for them to step out and think, well, my friends would say I'm very kind, I'm very friendly, but it's hard sometimes for them themselves to see it, because they've started that conditioning of low self-esteem, low self-worth, lack of confidence. And that may have come from parents, it may have come from school, it may have come from another source, but my aim is to wipe that away and get them back to seeing themselves as someone confident, with value, with self-worth, who can really get themselves back on track. So all the activities I do and all the strategies I teach are all around those tools. It's like a toolbox, and they can use it forever. So I teach the same things to adults as I teach to children.
And you mentioned that the young children are very confident in sharing those 5 amazing things, which I love that exercise. Amazing new things. It's fabulous. Yeah. What tips them into this sudden realm of low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-confidence?
There's multiple things that can be. I mean, if you are a sensitive child, you only need one person who you really admire and look up to say something bad about you or negative about you, who may not have meant it. They may have said it in jest. And I still know there are families that will still say, oh, look at you, and in a kind of derogatory way. They think it's a joke, but actually, in a way, that there's that saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. But actually, it's the other way around. Those names really do hurt you, and they sit within your heart, and they do make you feel, well, actually, if my mother or my father or my teacher thinks that about me, then I'm not anybody worthy, or I'm not anyone important. So actually, this is something I have to teach to families, to say that I know you're not saying that meaning to be unkind, or I know you're saying it because your parents said it to you, but actually stop and think, does that make you feel good about yourself? It's finding ways we want to encourage our children, give them that great self-esteem. I know when I asked my mother why she never praised us, she said, oh, we don't want to make you big-headed. And I think, oh God, isn't that sad that that's how it was seen in those days, that it would make you big-headed to feel that you were someone important or somebody worthy. Because in a way, if your own closest people don't love you, if your own mother or your own father or your own teachers aren't praising you and telling you good things about yourself, how are you going to believe that? Because they are your role models. They're the people you look up to. And I think, so for me, I'm always trying to find either tip the balance in the family home and get parents to notice it if they haven't noticed it, or teachers to notice it. I know when my children started at secondary school, some of the teachers there, and I'm not saying all teachers do this, but I know there's a slight fear element in secondary schools that we don't want these children to get too unruly, so we're going to come down hard on them on that first day. But what they don't realize is actually that really slams their confidence, their self-esteem, and their ability to want to speak out and suggest things and take part in things. If a teacher won't listen or says, be quiet, you mustn't speak out, it can just really squash them. And I've had a lot of families. I know we've also had lockdown, which is obviously the most bizarre thing ever. But a lot of families have come and said, my child has gone from this really safe, nurturing, loving primary school. They're now in their first year of secondary school and they're really struggling. And I think that might be where it's come from. I think the teachers are thinking they're doing them a favour by being really tough and firm and saying, right, this is how it is in this school. But actually for the child, especially having gone through lockdown, it's too much, and it's for the sensitive child, it's just too much, and they can't then build that trust and safety. For children to learn, they have to feel trust, and they have to feel loved, and they have to feel safe and happy. And again, I'm speaking from the heart because that was me. I knew the teachers I trusted. I knew the teachers that I felt really believed in me, and they're the teachers I really grew and learned well from. And the teachers that were really scary, I just sat there in complete fear the whole time thinking, oh my God, any minute now they're going to throw a book at me. They were allowed in those days. Or they're going to give me a detention. And actually that's such a shame, because you're actually really stifling children's learning by being negative.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you just reminded me of some experiences of being a small child. Probably I was 5 or 6. And yes, I mean, there were some punishments that involved physical pain. And one of them was one of my teachers had a ruler, and she would make us put our hands flat, and she would use the edge of the ruler to hit. And I did go to, and I remember going to see the head and saying, this can't be right. Is this really how, if we do something wrong, this is what happens? And she did say to us, no, that's not right. And actually that teacher, I never saw her again. But I do remember speaking out as a young child and having the confidence to do that. But it must have been because I felt I trusted and really liked my head. And I do have very fond memories of her. So it can make so much difference, can't it? And I wanted to ask you the question about that whole being unruly on the first day and sort of shaping the expectations of, because this is what you're talking about now. You're sort of how to balance, you talk about the balance, how to hold that balance between a relationship in a classroom and between a relationship with a parent and child, where there is obviously an edge where too much one way or another makes so much difference.
Yeah. And I use this lovely analogy that a friend talked to me about called where you compare a dandelion and an orchid, and you think a dandelion is going to thrive wherever it is, wherever that seed falls, whether it's between a crack in a pavement or on a lawn or in a field, it's going to thrive and it's going to grow and it's going to be fine. And many, many children are like those beautiful dandelions. But there are those few, and there's more of them coming now, that are more like an orchid. They are so beautiful and so exquisite, but they need very specific guidance, support and love. So if you think of an orchid, it needs a certain kind of environment, it needs a certain amount of water, sunlight, whatever, for it to really stay strong and beautiful in the way that it can be. And I think when I talk to parents, especially if it's a parent who's maybe had a recent diagnosis, their child's been told, they've told their child's is on the autistic spectrum, and that can be a real kind of like, oh, for them, how do we do this? How do we manage a child with autism? And I start by saying, well, you've still got a flower. It's just maybe not a dandelion, it's more of an orchid, and so it just needs different kind of treatment, different kind of ways for you to bring out the best in your child. And I think I'd like to think more teachers need to be hearing that and understanding it. I'm certainly obviously getting more connection with parents now who step forward, and it's wonderful because when they have the conversation, oh, I've got this child, he's full of anger, and then we start discussion and they'll say, oh, actually, I think they're probably getting that from me because, yeah, I'm quite angry, and actually maybe I need to do a bit of work on myself as well, and then we can do a family group treatment. So it's kind of looking at what's best for each child, each family, each setting, just to get the best really for everybody to grow. And I do think it's very, very old fashioned. I just keep thinking, why are schools, why are some teachers still doing this? And I can only think it is fear, or it's just because they just don't know any different, or no one's ever taught them any differently. But we know you get the best out of children when they're actually feeling safe and loved, like I said before, not in fear of you, because a fearful child just completely gets that reptilian brain, they shut down. And again, like I said, I did struggle to learn in school with those teachers that had that fear element. It just did not work for me.
So what is inspiring you now? What is the why behind everything you're doing?
Oh, it is that every time I meet a parent or come across, and we've got our Facebook cover following now is growing and growing and growing, and more families are choosing to home educate their children, because they're saying, we had lockdown and actually our children thrived during lockdown because we were giving them all one-to-one time. They weren't having the pressure of this angry teacher. And to be fair on teachers, I'm not slating them at all. I know they're under pressure. I know head teachers are under pressure because it comes from the government. You have to reach targets. You have to, your children have to make certain levels of progress. Otherwise you won't get your pay rise. It's completely the wrong way of educating. But so coming across families who are now choosing home education, because that's what they see as best for their child. They see that for a child to thrive, as we've just said about the orchid, they need to be in a certain environment. So I think for me, my why is very much every time I speak to one of those parents who say, oh, we're considering home education, it's not because we want to home educate, but because our child is just not managing in a mainstream school or in a school that can't meet their needs. I know SENCOs, the special educational needs coordinators, are overwhelmed by trying to support children. I know, as I've said, the systems, all of the systems out there are overwhelmed. They can't meet the needs. So the threshold is going higher and higher and higher. So families say, oh, I've waited for 2 years to get a referral with CAMS or whatever. And then they get there and it's kind of like, well, sorry, your child, yes, they have got some needs, but they're not high enough to reach our threshold for us to support them. So then the parents go away thinking, well, where do we go now? Most people find us because we're kind of like their last resort. I know that sounds, it's certainly in those circumstances. I think they think, well, we've tried everything else. Where else can we go? Oh, we've heard about Gabriel's Wellbeing and Education. And Gabriel, the name being strength of God. We believe strength, resilience. If we can give children strength and resilience, that's why people come to us. And it's usually a friend of a friend, or we've heard about you through this group, or somebody's told us about you, or I heard about this wonderful transformation that you did with this child. And we also have these wellbeing days, our woodland wellbeing days. So that's how it all started. It started with me as a head teacher in a nursery school, having parents their children had gone off to school. They'd been really happy in the nursery school, gone off to primary school, maybe been happy in the first year, which is reception, which is quite play-based. Then when it got more formal in year 1, year 2, parents were coming back to me and saying, don't know what to do. My child's just not settling. They're just not happy. Sunday evenings are that real kind of trauma where they're like, oh, I just don't want to go to school tomorrow. I've got a tummy ache. I feel sick. And I remember that myself as a child thinking, oh, and I know teachers feel that. There are some teachers that are feeling sick on a Sunday night thinking, oh, I've got school tomorrow. So sensitive children pick up on that. They know that it's not going to be a happy, safe place. So all these families are now saying, oh, let's home educate, because then we're not putting our children under these pressures. But then that brings other pressures, because it means one of the parents has got to stay at home and be with the child. So it means one of them's not earning, so their income goes down. So it does have a knock-on effect on the family. Or they can be trying to juggle, because we've all been doing that in lockdown. They can be trying to juggle work, half home educating. But the way we work, so when I set up these wellbeing days, it was around helping and reaching as many children as I could to come in the school holidays, to learn these strategies, techniques. And it might be a bit of yoga, a bit of meditation. It might be colouring mandalas, something that's just going to calm them. But also the biggest thing they love is being outside in nature, running around, teaching them things like campfire skills, how to wood whittle, how to light your own fire. And then we always end every session with, let's sit around the campfire and let's either write down or draw a picture of something that we'd like to throw into the fire and get rid of. So that's a really great kind of, let's get rid of all our worries and our fears into the fire. And then they get the opportunity also to grow something. So they have another piece of paper that might be, I want to grow this in my life. I want more of this. So they can put that in the fire for the fire angels to take away and whisk up to the universe and say, this is what I'd like to happen in my life. So they get this lovely ability to come and be free and be themselves, but also to recognize that they have some control and they have some techniques and skills they can use to manipulate where their life's going to go, and to believe in themselves. Like I said about the amazing me, if they really can truly believe that in their hearts and feel it, then they are amazing, and they will go on to be amazing young people in the future.
So you're talking here about empowering the children and from a very early age, because as you mentioned right at the beginning, that then stops putting so much pressure on the system all the way through, and it will alleviate the prison system, because people won't put themselves into that cycle where they then become kind of lost or whatever in the system. So tell me, at what point did you have this calling that you just knew this is what you were going to be doing?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I was doing a bit of exploring my spiritual side, and I was exploring a bit of angelic Reiki and a bit of crystal healing. And I came across this amazing woman who kind of did set me on this whole path. Her two sons had come to my nursery, and she came and did some meditation groups with our staff, because she said, I just feel I want to give something back to your nursery. And she did this beautiful past life kind of regression healing with me, and she just said, you've always had this ambition to set up a special school for children and run it with love and kindness. And I thought, gosh, I've never told anyone that. How did she know that? And this is when I started thinking, oh, there's a bit more to this than I realized. And that was about, I think we had a chat the other day, and we were saying I think that was about 2012, 2013. And I remember thinking, well, that's never going to happen. Where am I ever going to get that kind of money? And then I met somebody who said, I said something like, oh, when I win the lottery, I'm going to buy a big house in the country. I'm going to adopt loads of children and set up my own school. And this guy said, why are you waiting to win the lottery? There are people out there who are very altruistic, who want to support this kind of thing. They will help you buy this building, buy this school, and set up this amazing, incredible need. So that's kind of where I am right now. I'm at the point where I'm waiting for that connection, to find that person or those people who are going to say, we really love what you're doing, we really believe in it, we've got this spare bit of money, a couple of million would be great, to buy a property with loads of land around it in this area, because we're in the kind of Oxfordshire, Berkshire area, so it's pretty pricey around here, rather than buying a castle up in Scotland, which would be amazing, but I don't know as many people up there. So it is about finding the right connections, because I just know somewhere out there somebody is going to come forward and say, I am the person, we are the people, we're the group that want to help you to make this take the next step. We're in a temporary building, well, it's temporary as in it's a scout hut, and during lockdown they couldn't have their camps and they couldn't have their meetings, but now lockdown's unfolding, they are starting to meet and they are starting to have their camps, and that means we can't use that building so much, and the land, when it's mostly land, we like to be outside and work with the children out in nature. But yeah, so it's been an interesting journey for me to really believe and I suppose it was deep within my heart I started to realize, actually this has been my soul journey ever since I was born. I mean, my mum said she'd take me to a toddler group and I'd be picking up the babies, even though I was still a baby myself. So I obviously always had this desire to be around children. And lots of people say to me now, you just are like a magnet for children wherever I go, even in a supermarket, perhaps less so with the face mask on now, but wherever I go, children do see me. I don't know whether they see my aura or they just see something in me that it's almost like I know you, I trust you, you're a beautiful soul. And I have finally recognized that and thought, yeah, I am. And this is why I'm here. I'm here to help as many children as I can. I'm going to get on with this, make it happen. And it's just a really exciting gift to have. And I feel very honored and very blessed to be that person and find the right team to do it with me.
You've just given me an idea of somebody else I need you to connect with. I feel that there's a need for you to connect with them. So I will speak to you about them afterwards as well.
Oh, wonderful.
Because it's funny, isn't it? When you hear someone's mission and they're very clear about it, you know how you can then help them. And
Yes.
You said, oh, I need this piece of land, it needs to be in this area. And I'm thinking, oh yes, tick box, tick box, tick box. So I will definitely hopefully something will come of it. And this is what happens on this episode, on these podcasts, is that you have people come on who have very mission driven, they're values based, they're people centered and heart led, because their why is part of what they do. And that's what I absolutely love, sharing these stories, because they then, you go on, people listen to them, they take action. And you've listened to episodes, you've heard, what people have done as a result of tuning in. So it's just been such a privilege to have created this show and then have people like yourself on here and think, oh, I can connect you to people because I've now met so many.
Absolutely. And I must admit, after we chatted last time, I spoke to Karen Gibb it was, and we had a wonderful conversation, and she was fantastic because my 3-year-old grandson came in on the middle of the call and was bouncing around, and I was thinking, this doesn't look very professional, but she was so lovely and so understanding of him. And then a few other people, Madeline Black was talking about teaching children to have a voice, especially around sexual abuse, because a number of the children I work with have had child sexual abuse. And the lovely Andrew Marsh was talking about children with Asperger's, focusing on what they are able to do rather than seeing the label and seeing that as a negative. So I have been blessed, and I know there's lots more podcast episodes I need to listen to, but you're right, it's about connecting with the right people who share your dreams, your passion, but also who can educate you and help you understand why you're doing what you're doing and keep pushing you forward. And for me, every single day there'll be a message or a phone call or somebody somewhere will just, and I'll see it, hear it, and just think, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I literally do jump out of bed with great enthusiasm every day. I love my life, I love my job, I love everything about it. I loved being a head teacher. I know people used to say, nobody can be that positive and happy every day, Lisa. And I said, well, if you're in the right job doing the right thing, of course you can. And it's a choice. I choose happiness. Despite, I think people also think I've had this blissful, happy life. Well, I haven't. And as we talked earlier, they're now called adverse childhood experiences. But, I definitely tick a lot of those adverse childhood experiences and ended up in a very abusive marriage. So, don't get me wrong, I know about difficulties, and this is the bit people often misunderstand, but it's about how you choose to move forward and what you choose to do with it. So many people of our generation did have a lot of difficulties in their childhoods, and it's, yes, you can wallow and say, poor me, I've had a terrible life, and that doesn't really achieve anything or do anything except make you a very miserable person to be around. Whereas one of my clients recently described to me, when I was talking about radiators and drains, she said, Lisa, you are definitely one of life's radiators. And that to me is a massive compliment that I love. And I'm happy to take that. I was like, thank you so much. I'd love to be considered a radiator because that's what I wish to be.
Yeah, it's great. And also, I mean, when we talk about these polarized things, radiators and drains, both serve a purpose. They're both important, but we often put a negative attachment onto one and a positive onto the other. But sometimes, actually, they really have both flip sides. And I think it's important to see how they serve us as well as not, in all elements of what those things are. So yeah, very Lisa, I can hear people wanting to get in contact with you. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Wonderful. The best way would be for them to find our website, which is gabrielseducation.com. Also, or they could email me on lisabedlow@gabrielseducation.com, and I would love to hear from anybody. I'd be delighted.
Perfect. Well, I will put all of those details into the show notes so they can get hold of you, no problem. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight having you on the show. I am thrilled to bits to get this episode out, and I've already got in mind the title, which I'm very excited about. And I just want to ask you if you could leave some final words for the audience, please.
Oh gosh, final words for the audience really is just remember that inner child. Always tune into your own inner child, because it makes you relive those beautiful moments, but it also helps you connect and tune into the children of today and what they're experiencing and what life is all about. So see life through the eyes of a child.
Thank you for listening to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star Apple Podcast review. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook, and become a member of my inspiring, uplifting and positive Focus on Why Facebook group. I help people to focus on their why with clarity, uniting their passion with their purpose with a plan to create the life they truly desire. If you would like me to help you focus on your why, then please book a free 20-minute coaching call via calendly.com/Amy Rowlandson. And if you haven't already, please sign up for the Friday Focus weekly newsletter via my website, amyrowlandson.com. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.